Tim Allen. I'm here today to talk a little bit about Hey guys, Don's out of town this week, so Jim and I thought this would be the perfect opportunity to talk about tombstones. It's one of the things we do here, and a lot of times people who aren't in the horizontal machining business don't quite understand tombstones and the various types. And Jim, that is not the tombstone I was talking about. And it's not lunchtime, so we're not having pizza. And I know it's winter outside, but we're not going to Tombstone, Arizona either. This is the kind of tombstone we're talking about. Fixtures for horizontal machining centers. A lot of times they're called tombstones. They might be called pallet fixtures. They may be called tooling columns. I've heard them called, I couldn't even tell you the number of things I've heard them called, but traditionally they're called tombstones, and it's because this T-type looks like a tombstone.
How about the different types of mounting for the tombstones are there?
You know, there's different types of mounting. There's what they call the din mount, which is generally a center spud. The column mounts on there. There's a clocking pin that goes in the keyway on your pallet table, and that's how you square up the faces. There's the JIS mount, which is generally one tapped hole on one face and two tapped holes on the other face of the base, and you draw the tombstone into the corner. We make all of ours standard with the din mount, the 50 millimeter center spud and a 20 millimeter clocking pin. You know, it's kind of depends on what type of machine you have. Some machines have a center locating spud. Some machines use the edge locators. Again, it really depends on the kind of machine that you have, and sometimes it's a personal preference. Our machines will actually locate off the center or the edge, but we prefer to use the center spud here. It just seems to simplify the way that things are set up. Come on, Jim, let's go out to the shop and we'll take a look at some of the different types that there are, some of the different types that we make here, and a couple that we use in our own facility. So, you know, up in the conference room, we talked about the different kinds of tombstones. So this is a hexagon tombstone. If you've got a lot of small prismatic parts, you can gang them up on, you've got 6 faces to work with. So in a really high production environment with small, like valve bodies, all those little kind of prismatic parts, this is a real popular column for that because you can get a lot of parts on it. If you've got bigger parts that maybe have a projection where you're going to have clearance issues inside your machine enclosure, that's where the T column comes in nice. You can fixture this face up. You've got room for your part to protrude here, so you've got room to work 2 faces, and when you got a part located here, you can work 3 sides simultaneously, front and 2 sides. So a lot of times you can eliminate setups and reduce your cycle times. Square column, again, you know, lends itself to mounting vices on the faces. Prismatic parts, you can get 3 sides, again, both sides, front. You can load up all the sides. Here's another style, the window column. If you've got a part like a base for a chair, for example, where you're going to machine one face and then you've got a second face that protrudes, you can fixture it up here. It protrudes out the opposite sides. You can get, a lot of times you can get 4 faces at once. You can get bottom, left, right, and this opposite face that comes through the window. Or if you've just got a protrusion that's going to be in the way that makes it difficult to fixture on another type of column, that's where a window column comes in handy. This is a column that we made up years ago just for demonstration purposes to show some of the different ways that you could do a column. This side is keyed to put vices on. This side has got drilled and tapped hole pattern. Some of the holes are bushed, some of them are just tapped. So if you're changing your parts a lot, that's where that little column comes in kind of convenient, handy. A work face is like that. And then on this side, it's T-slotted. again, makes it easier to put a variety of parts on there. You can mount your clamps in the T-slots just like you would in the T-slots of your machine. Here's a fixture we use quite a bit. It's got this big vise on it. If we've got one or two pieces of a larger part, we put them in here. We can get 3 sides in the first op, flip it around, 3 sides in the second op, so we get all 6 sides and only 2 ops. So that gives you a little feeling of some of the variation of tombstones that are available. And you know, sometimes you got to think out of the box a little bit. What we're showing you here is really just the tip of the iceberg. Okay, you saw the finished tombstones out there, and Jim took some footage of various rough castings. A lot of people are going to say, well, how do you get that rough casting? Well, we start with a foam pattern. This is a pattern for a square column fixture. Pattern is just made out of polystyrene, just like you'd use to insulate your basement. It's formed up, it's got the machining stock on it. Once we get the pattern all done, it goes over to the foundry. They flip it upside down like this, pack it in the sand, pour in the iron, the foam goes away when it cools. You've got a tombstone. From there, it's going to go over to a heat treating source. They're going to stress relieve and anneal it before it comes here, and then we machine it. That way, you know, once it's been stress relieved and annealed and we machine it, this cast iron is real stable and it's not going to move around. Now, a lot of people are going to say, well, what happens if I don't want a square column? I don't want a hex column. I don't want a window column. Well, that's where the foam patterns are handy. Because in the foam, especially if you only want one, you know, if you wanted 10,000 of these, well, you might want a more permanent pattern. But if you want 1 or 2, you use the foam, you carve out the shape, put in some core holes if you need them. This one was going to get machined here. There's little mounting pads for clamping here. Tool clearance on the back side. Again, once the foam pattern is made, it goes over to the foundry, pack it in the sand, pour the iron, voila, tombstone. So, you know, there's a lot of things. You're not limited to square, hex, T, window, rectangular. You can do stuff like this. You can do big angle plates. So there's a lot of choices out there, and sometimes you got to think a little bit out of the box.
If someone wanted a custom one, what would they need? What would they need to come to you with in advance as far as preparation?
Well, this customer, for instance, came to us with a step file already done. They knew exactly what they wanted. They sent the step file over. We can bring the step file into our system, you know, quote it back to the customer. It's really helpful if you know what you want. We need to know, if we're going to do this, we need to know what size pallet you've got, how tall you want it, what size work faces. You know, do you want drilled and tapped holes? Do you want T-slots? Do you just want plain machined faces? Sometimes, you know, quite frequently, we'll do them where the customer says, well, I'm going to do the faces myself. So we do the bottom, we do the locating surfaces here, we do the top, we put in a couple tapped holes so they can pick it up with a crane, and then they can load it in their machine, machine those faces themselves. It saves the end user some money, and he gets exactly what he wants then. He doesn't have to say, well, gee, you know, I don't want to pay you guys to put all these holes in. I'm going to put my own holes in. So, you know, you can do that. All we need to know is what you want. If you have a drawing, you know, we've worked from drawings that were done on a napkin in a restaurant, and people have brought them to us and said, here, this is what I need. We can take an IGES file, we can take a step file, AutoCAD, you know, any kind of drawing like that, sketch it on a piece of graph paper, scan it, and email it over to us. We're more than happy to take a look at it, and generally we can turn a quote around in a day, sometimes 2. if it's a really, really big column, and we've done some big stuff, we've done angle plates as big as 8 feet tall. So if it's really big like that, we have to send that quote out to the foundry to get their pricing, because we get a little break on the really big stuff. You know, smaller columns like this, we know what the casting costs are going to be, so that's easy to quote. But really big stuff we have to send out, and sometimes that takes the foundry a couple days to get back to us. But for the most part, we'll generally turn a quote around in a day, 2 at the most, if it's something a little more complex. And if there's questions, we'll call the customer and say, okay, you've got a hole here that you're showing. You know, is this a drilled hole? Is it tapped, reamed? You know, it always makes a difference. We're more than happy to work with you. We have, if you want something, if you want hydraulic clamping, if you want some other type of mechanical clamping, we have some engineering houses that we work with to do that as well. So again, it all depends on what you want and what's going to work best for you. We've tried to show standard stuff, and we've got some custom that we've shown. So we're just trying to give you a good cross section of what's available, both again off the shelf or custom. Hopefully we've answered some of your questions about tombstones. If you have any other questions, again, feel free to call us here at Suburban Tool. Call us, send us an email, put a comment on the web. Jim is more than happy to respond to all of those methods of contact. And you can email me as well. We're always here to help. Thanks for watching. Make sure to check us out on the web at subtool.com. Check out our YouTube channel, Suburban Tool Incorporated. We've got over 100 videos on there now, and some of them are helpful hints, some of them are product info. And thanks for watching, folks.